All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So just right from the beginning, I know I'm just heard my little voice go up and little thing like that. I'm really sick right now, so I've been sick for the past 2 days. I've been really fighting it while at school and stuff like that. So um, if you can't understand what I'm saying, I do apologize. But then again, like I told some students in class, I know some of you guys don't watch these videos completely, so you don't even hear me. You just skip forward to the notes and some of that, which again, that's your choice, but you're missing out on a lot of stuff, but you're also missing out on this wonderful voice right now. So let's go ahead and get started with today's lesson. So we're going to analyze the grant administration. We're examine the turn in trust that people had towards the government. And we're going to create an argument on whether a deal or compromise was made between President Hayes and the Democratic Party. Hayes is not a Democrat, he's a Republican. So he's on one side of the political spectrum, and you know, we're going to see, did he make a deal with the other side? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. So, so here's your warm up picture. Now, the question is not asking you, what do you see? What's going on? No, 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 no. That's not what I'm asking. My question is actually very simpler than that. It's basically saying if you notice those guys, the little ones surrounding the big guy, they say, let us have a peace. Whereas he, the guy in the hat, the big tall guy, saying, let us have peace. So my question is this: what's the difference between those little guys, their peace, Piece, and his peace, Peace? What's the difference? And give an example. You know, what's the example of using the word peace, the Piece? Okay. So what's the difference? And give an example for each word. Like, what does that mean? Okay. So think about it. Pause the video. Write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right. So again, I know I'm sick, so I do apologize before we start if I start coughing and things like that. Okay, I'm gonna try to edit it out, but I don't think I'll get all of them out. All right. So if you remember from last week, President Johnson is no longer president. Neither party wants him, Democrats or Republican. So the Republican need somebody. And who better than the other hero of the Civil War than General Grant? So they asked him, do you want to run for president? Please run for president. And he says, yeah, okay, I'll do it. So it's an easy victory. We, the United States, American citizens, we love our celebrities, we love our generals, and it just so happened that Grant is not only a general, but he's also a celebrity. But here's the problem: he doesn't have political experience. He doesn't know how to negotiate. He doesn't know when he's talking to a politician whether they're asking for something, lying to his face. He really can't tell. Because you have to remember these politicians are really good at blending words and meaning and things like that. Okay. Now, Grant is very popular. People love him. People love General Grant. The problem is he doesn't like being in the middle of all the attention. He doesn't like that stuff. He's actually a very shy guy. You know, at a party, he doesn't want to be that person in the middle of the room, like, hey, look at me, put the lights on me, type of thing. No, he's not like that at all. If he could, he'd be the guy against the wall, smoking a cigar, having a drink, and just not bothering anybody and not wanting to be bothered. Okay. Now, you heard me say, have a cigar. Well, here's the thing: Grant smoked about 20 cigars a day on average. All right. Um, and we're talking about cigars, not little cigarettes. No, 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 cigars, and not those little stogies either. We're talking, the good sized cigars. So 20 a day. The dude smoked like a freight train. And here's the thing, though. Guess how he dies? Throat cancer. So yeah. Um. So also, too, people see him quite a bit throughout the White House with like a drink in his hand. A lot of times it was whiskey. So people associated him as, oh, he's a drunk. When in reality, he really wasn't like a drunk, a lush, always just drinking, drinking. No. Once in a while, yeah, he'd like a little drink, you know, but he wasn't a full blown out alcoholic, no. Okay. Now, being, like I said, no experience in politics, he actually did a really bad thing. So when a president becomes a president, he picks people who be to be a Secretary of State, Secretary of Interior, Secretary of War, Secretary of Treasury, things like that. Excuse me. And he just picked the wrong people. These guys that he picked basically got the job and said, okay, how can I make money off this job? So when other people, companies, things like that would be like, hey, I want to sell you guys this. I want the government to help me out with this. I want to talk to the president about this. They'd be like, okay, fine. What do we get out of this? Where's our cut? Where's our money? You know. So these guys were, there's an old saying called pay to play. These guys are the very definition of that. Okay. And the way things were starting to seem was that these guys were helping those people who were bribing them. So those people were rich people, not poor and average person. They couldn't afford to pay off these, politician guys. So they had to basically go through the proper channels and so that stuff takes a long time. But all these policies, all these rules and things like that that under Grant's administration was going towards rich people and not really poor. And a lot of people saw that. So some people in the Republican Party realized like, hey, this is not the way Lincoln would have ran things. So they separated into the liberal Republican Party. So 4 years went by, and the American people were like, okay, let's give Grant one more try. There's no way in the world he could possibly mess up again. And guess what? He does. In fact, the people he hires for the second administration are just as bad as the people from his first administration. All right. That picture right there is a great illustration. He's basically supporting all these guys, keeping them afloat, and they're just doing everything they can to bring him down, as much as possible. And you know, they're basically banking off his name. It got so bad that these guys actually hurt our economy. They really put it through a grinder. And one of the more powerful, popular banks at that time went bankrupt. Okay. This was known as the Panic of 1873. The thing is, though, too, like I was telling some students in class, um, banks are not like how they are now. Whereas you put your money into a Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, whatever, if that bank you put your money in, let's say you just put it in, you're leaving, and then some people come in and they rob it, you can go to another one of those banks and take out your money. Okay, your money is federally insured under the FDIC for up to $250,000. But back then, if you put your money in and somebody robbed it, the place, you couldn't go to another bank and say, hey, I need my $1,000. Yeah, no, we don't have your $1,000. We have other people's $1,000, but we don't have yours. You know, or hey, we got robbed. We your money's gone, and that was it. That's why a lot of people back then would put their money in like their mattress and hide it somewhere, bury it. Because again, they didn't trust banks. Okay, now his popularity, Grant's, was going down bad. So, excuse me, the Democrats actually took control of the House of Representatives and they took a large chunk from the Senate. Now, if one political party controls both the House of Representatives and the Senate, they control Congress because both groups equal Congress. And they can basically make any laws they want. Yeah, the president can veto it, but if they have a large enough number, they can actually override the president. Okay. So this is seen as the beginning of the end of Reconstruction. All right. So the Democrats, remember, these are the guys who used to, they were in the South. They don't really like the laws and stuff like that to help out African Americans, right? They start to tell people around the country, look at these Republicans, they raised your taxes way up here. If we're elected, we're going to cut your taxes way down. And also, look at them. They're corrupt. Look at them. And the thing is, they're not wrong. Grant's administration was very corrupt and things like that. Um, and the other thing, too, what the Democrats did in the South was that they uh, basically stopped African Americans from voting, registering to vote, doing all stuff. They use fraud, they use intimidation. Like I told the class, sometimes like if you had a big enough town, you could have like five polling places, places where you five different places where you can go and vote. And what they would do to kind of stop people from voting is they'd say, "Oh, we're going to close all five down. Oh, but we're going to leave one open, and it's going to be way far, 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 far away from everyone." The reason they did this is because they didn't want people to vote. They didn't want certain people to vote. It still goes on to this day, believe it or not. They'll say, "Oh, the polling place is closed," because they don't want you to vote. They want you to go and be like, "Oh my God, it's way too far away. You know what? I'm not going to vote." You know, or "Oh, look at the line; it's so huge. I'm not going to go vote." They do that intentionally, hoping that you'll. Okay, well, you know what? I'm just one vote. What does it matter? It mattered, guys. It really does. Because if you're saying that and thinking that, can you imagine how many thousands of people have said the same thing? And that's just one town. Can you imagine the entire state? Imagine the entire country? Yeah, that's a lot of people. So, yeah, don't let them do that kind of stuff. Don't let them scare you. Don't let them um, make you think that. Okay. Now, the election of 1876. This was the Democrats see this as a way to save the South. Now, Rutherford B. Hayes, a Republican, right? He's going against Samuel Tilden, a Democrat. And what ends up happening is in several states, all of them in the South, by the way, um, there's 20 electoral colleges votes that were too close to call, so they're going to have to do like kind of like a recount type of thing. Um, Tilden only needs three. He just needs three electoral college votes, basically one state, and he wins. Okay. And so he basically goes, "Okay, I got this. I've won. All the states are in the South. All those southern states are Democrats. Hayes is a Republican. I'm a Democrat. They're gonna go my way." Ends up being somehow, some way, Hayes wins all 20 electoral college votes. Now Tilden and a lot of his supporters are ticked off. They're upset. They're angry. And something happens. Okay, something happens where kind of suspicious. All right, you're gonna see in a second. Now, before I tell you, I'm gonna tell you this right now. There is no evidence of this. Okay, but this is just known, like, and acknowledged by historians as the Compromise of 1877. Like I said, there's no paper writing says, "Oh, let's do this," or people say, "Oh, I witnessed these guys getting together and talking and things like that." No, there's none of that. Um, But the thing is, Hayes is now president. But the first thing he does is something that a Republican president wouldn't have done. It's actually something the Democrats would have done. The Democrats wanted. And that's in April 1877. He removes federal troops from the South. Now, some students in class were like, well, who cares? You know, here's the thing, the federal troops in the South, they protected the white Republicans, the African Americans. The Freedmen Bureau was all federal troops. They negotiated contracts for African Americans. They made sure that their rights weren't being violated by sheriffs and mayors and governors and things like that. They made sure that the laws that said African Americans could do this, can't do that, that they weren't being violated. But now that they're gone, no one's there to protect them. No one's there to make sure that their rights are not being violated. So when that happens, basically, um, this is like the end of the Reconstruction era. Now, Democrats, remember, these are the guys who lost during the Civil War. A lot of them were like, yeah, yeah, we won. Hey, this is what we wanted. Let's shove it in the face of those Republicans. They did this to us for years. Let's put it in their face. But there were some Democratic leaders who were like, no, no, we're not going to do that. Why not? Why not? They did it to us. Yeah, but we have a bigger plan. But we need you guys to play cool, basically shut up, and let us handle this, all right? Just follow our lead. All right, all right, all right. So basically, the Southern leaders, they knew, hey, we can't go back to the way things were with having slaves and some of that. They couldn't change the laws. But what they did do is tell the Northern people, we're going to change. We're going to be the new South. We're going to have railroads. We're going to have factories and industry here, not just crops. So the northern people were like, yes, you finally get it. You understand. Great. Awesome. And as you're going to see, that was just all hot air. So the North actually did create a lot of railroads and factories and industry, some of that. That was the North. The South, when they said, oh, we're going to do that too, they didn't. They really didn't make much railroads. They made some, right? But not too much. Not like the North. And they did have some factories, but just like a sprinkle here and there throughout the South, but not too much. They focused still on crops, cotton, tobacco, corn, things like that, you know. And a lot of the African Americans who were slaves, they were alive when the Civil War was going on, so they remember what slavery was like. Now that the Reconstruction is over, now that things are going, the South is in power and things like that, they feel like, hey, things are going back to the way they were. Now, granted, they're not slaves, okay? But the Southern people are doing everything they can. All these politicians, sheriffs, they're making sure that the African Americans cannot progress, they cannot grow. They can't even go to a bank and ask for a loan to buy more land and things like that. Or no, they were not allowed to. You know, um, they were anytime somebody of African American descent tried to do something to pick themselves up, make their lives for their families and themselves better, they were knocked down again by politicians, by sheriffs, by the racist groups. So yeah, they just felt like we're back to the way things were, except now we're not slaves. We're just dirt poor. Now, speaking of that, poor white farmers too. They had to become tenant farmers, which meant they had to pay for working on the land that they had a house on. It's not their land. It's not their property. They're actually kind of renting it. And then they became sharecroppers. And a sharecropper is somebody who works the land, sells the crops, whatever it may be, and sometimes they had to give up like for every $3, they had to give up $2. You know, some places for every $4 you made, you had to give three. So things were bad for them. Uh, and a student asked me earlier too, why did they have to do that? Well, because they had to pay for the rent, the seeds, fertilizer, tools. They couldn't pay for it themselves. Again, the people in charge made sure that they didn't have enough money to pay for that stuff. You know, and even if they did, and they went to a store, the owner of the store wouldn't sell it to them. So, because they knew, hey, if you're buying these tools, that means you have money, and then you're not going to need that white uh, owner anymore. So, you know, no, we're not going to sell you this or that. You know, so they had to be reliant on the slave owner, or sorry, slave owner, the landlord, the owner of the land. Um, so yeah, this happens, and this continues for almost the next 100 years. up until the time of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, all these guys. So as we go on from here on out, talking about the industrial age, World War One, World Great Depression, World War Two. While we're talking about that stuff, what's happening in the South stays the same. So that's why I really emphasize to the class. Remember this section. Remember this part. That's how the lives of the African Americans were because it remained that way for almost 100 years. All right, so here's my question to you. Should the president be responsible for the action of the people in his administration? So let's say the Secretary of Education, the people who make sure that schools get their money for funding and things like that to pay for electricity, pencils, papers, and all that stuff. Let's say that person messes up and they lose all the money. Who should be responsible for that? Should the president because they hired that person, or should that person be held responsible because they're the ones who did it? What do you think? Should the president be held responsible for the actions of those people? Why not? Okay. So once you've answered this question, you're done with this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. With that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.